6 or 7 outstanding speakers, so we'll have to try to them also to make short. So what are the issue of this roundtable? It will be to reply to these 4 questions. So I will try to read with you these 4 questions. Probably you are not in a good position to read it, but okay, try to understand my French-English. So I will, as there are 4 questions, I will ask to each of you at least to give an answer at 2 questions, okay? Not to have all of you giving an answer to all the questions. So you can choose 2 questions, okay, that fit better to your own expertise or sensibility. So the first question is, which kind of interstate problems are you able to address through the different governance bodies set up in your own, sorry for the misspelling, for your own river systems, okay? The second question is, how would you expect, that's very important for Piang, how or what do you expect from Piang to help you solving different issues? For example, standardization of vessels and waterway related section, maintenance, infrastructure, and so on. So what can you expect from Piang? What kind of innovation are you experiencing already that are already applied in your own river systems? And the last question, what would you expect from a large navigable river international network? And which topics should be treated from your point of view in this network? Okay? So we'll start by the first one, obviously. So you can think a little bit. So I will give you 30 seconds to think, and I will give you briefly my own, not conclusion, but I feel that the presentation were really outstanding. First, as a professor from university and not really involved in organization of a large river or large basin, I see that one of really very important requirement that few of you highlight is to have a legal agreement. That's very important. And this is a legal but also a technical agreement or guideline that must be agreed by all the countries, so which can be ship size, which can be bridge clearance, safety, dangerous goods. So it's also very important to have multifunctional infrastructures. So not infrastructure that has a single aim. Second point that you highlighted, is in fact maintenance. So maintenance in such large river, very large or very small, like the Rhine River, very important issue is the maintenance. So somebody said you have to plan maintenance at the design stage. So when you plan the infrastructure, you already have to think how you will maintain these infrastructures. And the second, still in the maintenance, is the common maintenance. So if you have really international rivers, or it could be many states, like in United States, you need to have a common agreement on the maintenance, for example, on the dredging. And the last, I hope that now the idea coming to your mind. And the last, I will summarize, we must consider the river as a whole. And I said that also when I saw the Mekong River, I'm always a little bit disappointed to see a nice river like that, and only part of the river are navigables. For me, a river is only valuable if you can navigate from one point to another point. If not, of course, I fully understand the difficulty, but I really have the feeling that if you want to develop a multi-international or whatever you call it, we should try to make it as a whole and not only a part or a section. Okay, that's my personal comment. So maybe I can give you the floor.
Yeah, thank you for the question and the observation. The governance system for the Rhine is actually fairly simple. The riparian states, they came together and they said, okay, the Rhine should be free for everyone, there should be equal access, equal rights, and this was drawn up in a document that had maybe 20 or 30 articles, but not more. The main issue is that the member states, they handed over legal competence to the CCNR. So it is not anymore the member states that decide about the regulations that are applicable on the Rhine, but it is the international organization. And that makes it, of course, much easier to govern and to regulate international navigation if there is one central body doing it. Then, Philippe, you said something about the river as a whole. Okay, it is the whole length for navigation, but I want to stress the other component, all aspects of a river, not only navigation. And so I would like to use the opportunity to inform you that there is a second commission for the Rhine. Not only is the Central Commission for Navigation, but there is also the International Commission for the Protection of the Rhine. And they work on environmental issues, of the protection of the aquatic environment. And those two commissions, we work together, and I think that is necessary. If you want to have a sustainable development of inland navigation, you have to think about all the other uses. So I think we are on the Rhine, we are in a lucky situation. We have this dedicated commission with real powers that Lieven would like to have for the Mekong and for navigation. But we also have a very good partner, another international organization for environmental questions. I think that also helps to explain why on one side we have very heavy traffic on the Rhine, and on the other side we have long stretches of the Rhine that are actually protected, nature-protected areas from shore to shore. So our ships can go through nature-protected areas. Then you asked about maintenance. I think there, again, the Rhine is in a fairly good situation because our member states are committed to maintain the Rhine on a high standard, because the Rhine has a very important economic impact on the countries. So, for example, we have the largest chemical factories in the world is sitting on the Upper Rhine. So if there would not be good maintenance, then this factory that employs 35,000 people would have problems to get supplies. So there is a strong interest of the member states to do the maintenance. We in the CCNR, we agree on standards, but it's done in the responsibility of the member states, and they also pay for it. I think that's what I want to say to question one.
Thank you, Mr. Gerno, Pauli.
I mean, the legal agreements in the back, they are necessary, but not always sufficient. If a river commission has not, like the Central Commission for the Rhine, taken over some legal competence, it is still a question of policy focus, which is in most of the cases not the case in all the countries. I think recent success on the Danube is based on some policy interest, in our case from the European Union, which with its new framework of the Trans-European Transport Network really tried to care and move the relevant countries also on the Danube to make more efforts towards fulfilling their previous agreements, which were not fulfilled. And this was also based on something which, at least the Danube I can notice, is between the people who are operating on the river. There is a really common spirit in the tradition of the old transport thing. They are liking to work together in spite of adhering different countries which might have diplomatic conflicts. So counting on this, relying on this bottom-up movement, yes, we want to cooperate. If there is some money and some commitment from policy, then success is there. If we look to the issue of policy focus, then I think a remark is needed that we really have to look at the rivers in their entirety. I mean, we are only able to do anything if we follow kind of integrated approach, looking for environment, navigation, so economy, and also safety at the same time. I think we have no project anymore which is unidimensional, just making traffic easier, but it's always a combination of these things because the environment and other uses are really in the policy focus, maybe not directly from governments, but through individual stakeholders, NGOs and so on, pushing on really going for the fulfillment of the needs in Europe, the case of the Water Framework Directive and associated legislation. So somehow to convince policy and really looking always for an integrated approach, that's the lesson which we think we have learned and try to implement.
Thank you, Michael. Niven from Mekong Commission.
A few words on the legal frameworks, and then, as you mentioned, to have a corridor, the complete corridor. In 2009, we established the agreement between Cambodia and Vietnam, navigation agreement. That means that ships should not stop at the border, they should have the same rules and regulations, the same fees, so to improve trade between the two countries. That's the main objective. Now, the easy bit was to establish the agreement. Both countries were like, yeah, we have an agreement. It took a long time to formulate because we're very detailed. But once the agreement was there, then we had to go into the step of implementing the agreement. And that's where you have a problem. We established a committee, a bilateral Mekong Navigation Facility Committee between Cambodia and Vietnam. But you already have a different in level. Vietnam is quite well developed, whilst Cambodia is not. That also introduces the problem of finances and funding. How do we encounter that? We contacted the World Bank, and they will now help us because they are a neutral broker, and they come in with the funds for 5 years until they're self-sustainable and they can implement. So our lesson is to establish an agreement is actually not that difficult, but to implement it is a little bit more tough, so you have to look at that issue. The second, why is it not a complete corridor? Rivers like the Rhine or the Danube have been developed a long time ago, when you did not have stakeholders' involvement as much as you have now. In a country like Thailand, it's full of NGOs. There are lobbyists for ecology, and I fully agree with them, and they should be there. But it's not always helpful, because they have their own interest. So if we come with plans of rock blasting or dredging, countries like Thailand, they say, no, we cannot do that. It's impossible. Whilst countries like Vietnam, they want to move ahead. But as a commission, you have to broker in between. So we are a bit unlucky that at this time in history, we are already quite far advanced in the ecology, so we have to find the perfect balance and show the advantages of inland navigation, the environmental advantages, the emissions limitations, and so on. But it takes a long time before you can get this message across. Thank you.
Thank you. Tokarski from Brazil.
Okay. Eu vejo o seguinte, talvez a contribuição da Bianchi está em algo que eu coloquei na palestra. Deixa o pessoal pegar aí. Okay. A contribuição, repetindo então, talvez da Bianchi, já está vindo um pouco aqui no que estava falando. Nós, Brasil, Paraguai, Bolívia, Argentina, Uruguai, não somos capazes de avançar um acordo de hidrovia, que é a hidrovia do Paraguai. Ficamos 15 a 20 anos elaborando regulamentos, e aí demoraram mais meia dúzia ou 10 anos para internalizar em cada país. A hora que internalizou, eles estão ultrapassados. Então, nós temos um potencial de transporte no Rio Paraguai e que está sendo represado porque tem restrições que determinados países fazem, como, por exemplo, tripulação. Se sai com a tripulação brasileira, chega num outro determinado país, tem que praticamente trocar a tripulação. Um absurdo, né? E apesar que nós temos duas línguas principais, que é o português e o espanhol, mas tem alguma outra terceira língua que se coloca regional e a tripulação vai falar essa terceira língua e fica difícil. Guarani, por exemplo. Então, eu vejo que, se não, vamos dizer assim, profissionalizar isso aí, se não tiver um órgão à frente, tá? Até porque o acordo já teve uma secretaria executiva e que teria um presidente de cada país a cada 2 anos. E foi desfeita. E temos alguns anos sem a secretaria. Se eu perguntar em qualquer fórum hoje, quem responde pela hidrovia? Ninguém. Então, é algo... o Rio Paraguai é tão grande, poderia ser tão grande como um rio de integração, e nós estamos, estávamos há 4 anos sem se conversar no acordo. Sexta-feira passada teve uma reunião, foi marcado em cima da hora. Se tivesse um pouco mais de tempo, a gente estava representando o Brasil, tá? Foi aqui, inclusive, tá? Em 15 dias marcaram e teve. Então, há 4 anos sem falar, daí marca correndo. Então, talvez a Bianchi ela seja, dada a referência que ela é a nível mundial, até de conhecimento, possa colaborar para isso. Obrigado.
So I propose now we move to the second question. So I just read with you again. So how would you expect that Bianchi can solve these different issues? So it's a very pragmatic question. So of course, Bianchi is an international association, but with limited budget and resources. Probably you are aware of what Bianchi can do, like a conference as today. We can organize workshop, a short course, also some working groups, specific working groups. So if you have any specific demand or expectation of what can, in practice, Bianchi provide.
Thank you. I think that Bianchi has a very important role in this subject. This type of gatherings, putting people together and learning from each other is very, very important. And I also consider that Bianchi can provide some type of guidelines on the different subjects. Of course, these guidelines will come from different working groups, and each of these main large basin can afford people to participate in these working groups. So the net that Jofra is suggesting to build between the different basins, I think that has to be encouraged.
Thank you. Hélène, please.
Thank you. What I observe is that on technical issues such as standardization of vessels or maintenance and infrastructure, that the current Smart Rivers function already provides much of that, whether it's also within panels or in workshops. For example, the United States learned a great deal from their friends at Via Danau when Smart Rivers was organized, and while the United States was engaging in expanding maritime safety or maritime navigation services, I believe that the relationships they developed through PINC and Smart Rivers accelerated those. And we have many great examples, such as the Lock Operations Management application through the Army Corps of Engineers to modernize the way in which we handle the accumulation of cargo data, navigation, charting, ECDIS, electronic charting on our inland systems. So I don't believe that a conversation through basins will enhance that. But what I hear today is that as a networking, sharing of best practices, sharing in larger scope on how perhaps management practices are done may be of great value. I will say in the United States we have lots of legal agreements. We don't need more. Having legal agreements is great, especially on policy and perhaps broad operational aspects. But we have a saying in the United States that all politics is local, that it doesn't really matter what the federal government says, it really only matters how the locals feel. And in the Mississippi River in particular, is there anybody here from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers? No, I am not with the Army Corps, but I will speak for them. You may have a legal agreement and you may have a policy of practice. But in the United States, for those who have traveled, and we spoke about this a little bit, Pablo and us the other night, that in the United States, the cultural manners of the areas are very different. The way they do business is very different. And if you say you're from the federal government or you're from PINC and you go to Louisiana and you want to talk about how things should get done, they're going to tell you, anybody, us, very quickly, that you don't know what you're talking about because it's about them, and only they know. So it's a perspective we have to keep that that we do it differently internationally, and we do it differently in the United States within the United States. So these are very emotional issues for people. I do think that a certain sense of expertise and international experience would be a great thing to share, but not in long conferences, perhaps through short half-day programs or day programs where we bring in experts under the PINC banner to share these with locals or at different places and with the strategic intent to educate and inform ourselves and others may be of great benefit. But ultimately in the United States, we don't really need help on standardization of vessels. We have protectionist issues on domestic trade that will only raise more problems than we need. Maintenance and infrastructure, you know, it's handled, the issue is money. Unless you have a more clever way of financing than we do and have a better sense of public-private partnerships than anybody. I think those are the main issues. But in the United States, I think we look at it, we don't look at it differently, but it needs to be addressed based upon the ultimate goal. And I know, though, that the U.S. Commission would support however PIANC's banner could be used to educate and inform, to develop partnerships, and to share best practices.
Thank you, Hélène. So, what I understand, I would say that you do not expect the development of large conferences and so on, but you prefer some local workshop with the local person on a specific topics in order to exchange experiences. So that could be a very practical action that PIANC can try to do it. But not only US with US. Of course, it could happen everywhere in the world, but with some exchange of experience. Thank you.
Entrando nessa questão, ela me remete a algo que a representante dos Estados Unidos estava colocando. Quando eu falo da PIANC para, de repente, avançar, talvez ela já está fazendo um papel importante, que é esse, levantando, vamos dizer, trouxe experiência em outros países, onde avançaram-se acordos de formas diferentes. Também acho assim, a gente conhece a PIANC, ela não é aquela estrutura enorme, mas no Brasil e aqui na América do Sul talvez precise um pouco mais dessa experiência, talvez a PIANC possa contribuir mais com, de repente, fóruns como esses. E uma outra questão que no Brasil, por exemplo, nós transportamos comboios para embarcações somadas, várias balsas, para 40 mil toneladas. Hoje nós temos, para o transporte de carga, tecnologia bem evoluída. Agora, talvez a PIANC ela contribuiria, no caso do Brasil, para universalizar mais isso aí, para que isso seja dissipado em toda, vamos dizer, uma parte maior da sociedade e a importância disso. E, por exemplo, algo que a gente precisa avançar no Brasil é embarcações de baixo calado. Nós, logo de cara, nós temos por volta de 5 mil quilômetros de rios. Se tivéssemos embarcações de baixo calado, nós, para que tivesse uma dragagem menor de determinados rios, a gente acresceria 5 mil quilômetros de rios a mais na navegação.
Okay, just can you specify a little bit clearly what you mean by cargo? You need updated technology in cargo. You mean in vessels or in transportation of cargos?
Eu estou falando do transporte de carga. No caso, um exemplo, o transporte de soja no Rio Madeira. Hoje é feito com um comboio, um empurrador, comboio de embarcações, nós transportamos já 40 mil toneladas numa embarcação. Agora, eu falo para transporte de carga mesmo também, para volumes menores, com calados menores. Tá? Porque determinados rios no Brasil, momentaneamente, não se concebe, por exemplo, você fazer grandes dragagens, questão ambiental. Se tivermos embarcações mais adaptadas a determinados rios, há um exemplo. O rio Araguaia, você pode navegar 1.000 quilômetros com uma embarcação dessa.
Thank you. I fully agree with you. This also a topic that we discuss sometimes in PIANC, because we feel, especially in income, we feel that in income we are not specialists in shipbuilding. We are not naval architects. But of course, it's important for a person like you that manage a waterway to push the development and the construction of the right vessels. So I don't think that Piang will design the vessels, but we can identify the right vessels for the right waterways. Pablo.
Something really short. Like maybe the same working group you are doing for the classification of vessels in Europe can be proposed for study for South America or the different regions.
Thank you. Time is running, so a last comment on this question, otherwise we move to question 3. Okay, let's go to question 3. Okay, thank you. So question 3 is what kind of innovation have you experienced? So have you already implemented in your rivers or basin that you are really proud of and you would like to share with the other countries? Please.
Yes. One item that was very important for us in this Hidrovia Paraná-Paraguay waterway was the implementation of automated identification systems. With this, we can follow the path of the ships and we can adapt our project to the real path of the ships. And it brings my attention the comment of Mr. Tokowski of he was willing to do something like that, and he has asking the Navy when the automated identification system can help him a lot to do the following of ships and convoys. So, of course, in Europe, the automated identification system is fully available, but it's not in our waterways. And the result of that was not only helping in the designing of the waterway, mainly the path that the ships are following, but also to control times, to control where these convoys are stopping or not. So, and also, of course, the control of accidents in the waterway. So for us, we are very proud of our automatic identification system network in the waterway.
Thank you, Mr. Calente. So, Gerno, and I think Michael has raising the hand, so maybe you have the same idea in mind. But I would like to ask one of you two to explain a little bit to the public a new working group, a new Piang working groups, 125, which a risk guideline that they will develop. In fact, they will especially look about the development of the river information systems, not specifically for a country as it's currently done in Germany, in France, in Belgium, in Holland, but to make it on the international levels. And so maybe there is a room in relation with that. Please.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I would like to respond directly to you because, as you said, in Europe and especially on the Rhine, the use of inland AIS, so automatic identification system, is mandatory. And we experienced, because it was implemented in multi-state environment, so in 4 countries, that makes it more complicated than when you have it only in one country. So we had quite a lot of discussions about that, how best to implement it. And so if you are thinking to have cross-border AAS systems in South America, we are very happy to share with you our experience. And what was we were very much supported in our work, as Philippe said, from the working groups inside and outside Piang about river information services. Maybe you know that PIANC has a standard, a standing permanent, they call it, yes, thank you, a permanent working group for river information services. And this working group has developed guidelines how to implement river information services. And this working group will start again to work. And so maybe members from your countries want to participate. So right now, this work is a bit focused on Europe and the US, but the focus could get wider. And if you want to learn more about Inland AIS, the chairman of the European working group that deals with Inland AIS is actually sitting here in the room. That is Stefan Bober from Germany, and he can he can answer all your questions that you might have about Inland AIS in Europe. But as I said, we are happy to share our experience. The experience was not always happy. Sometimes we made mistakes. But we learned from them, and you can contact me, you can contact Stefan Bober, and we will be happy to give you information.
Thank you. So I invite maybe all the country like Brazil, Argentina, but maybe also Uruguay, Paraguay, and also to join that working group. I'm really sure that will be a nice experience of making some networking at that level to share experience, and that could be useful for you, and also a nice way to disseminate PIANC experience all over the world. So last comment for this question, Hélène, and then Michael. Okay, let's do.
Thank you. If I may, I know I said I would not do question 3, but if I may, innovations. If I could, it's not about innovation so much as what is an emerging issue for us in the United States, and I would imagine everywhere, is the issue of big data, and the fact that maritime data and big data, we all have a lot of data. The question is, do we have the right data? Do we have usable data? Do we have good data? Do we have shareable data, interoperable data? In the United States, there are over 30 federal agencies that engage in maritime transportation. You know the U.S. Coast Guard, you know U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, you know NOAA for charting and mapping, but the list is very large. Department of Energy, Department of Justice, Department of Interior, they're all very interested and collect in different ways maritime-related data. So for us, it is we are very much engaged on trying to address how we acquire the information, the way in which we share, the way in which are we collecting more than once and using more than once? Are we collecting once and using many times? We also have the challenge of data that is collected for safety reasons and data that is collected for security reasons. In the United States, the security people have all the money. So we want to use that data and rather than collect it individually and then use for our own purposes. This is very challenging for us. So there is the machine-to-machine talk, then there is the acquisition part, the analysis part, there is static data, there is operational data, there's real-time data. How do we present in a meaningful way? There's the data side, the geospatial and geo side of it, and then there is, it's very complicated. So I would say that I think some of the innovations we're doing on that, it's not like a technology, an operational technology related to ship design or ship operation, but I believe that is an area in which PIANC, it's all related to our waterways, that I think PIANC could bring brilliant expertise. It's just a hugely emerging issue for us, and it's slightly different than navigation technologies and navigation services. Certainly they are entwined, but I think that is a very large area for us. And as we go forward to understand the performance of our systems, it would be nice if we move forward understanding data in common terms, in common terminology. We have a dozen different definitions of a port in the United States based upon who is collecting that. And because we understand it's for different purposes in acquisition. So I mention that as an innovation, but emerging use.
Thank you. So Michael, please.
Some comments to the river information services. Still, I mean, this is the only example where I really come to the conclusion we are proud of it along the Danube and in Europe that we have achieved it. And at the basis of that, for sure, are the PIANG risk guidelines, which, as it was discussed, now have to be updated. Nevertheless, I mean, we have implementations and all over Europe somehow. So, but the thing is not done yet. I mean, we have a lot of organizational, legal, and economical issues in the practical usage of risks. I mean, the issues of privacy of data, data exchange between countries, I mean, a major issue, but also really market issues, the understanding of the logistics sector by itself, what data are useful to provide better logistics that they are common and shared, and what are making, as a logistics provider, my competitive advantage. This is a very diverse discussion, and which still has to evolve for really getting the full benefits of risk. I said it's the only example. I mean, in principle, I think innovation is a very difficult issue in inland navigation. At least in Europe, we have what we call a fragmented market providing navigation services. We have many individual entrepreneurs which have their own vessel and are small enterprises, and only very few bigger guys which have room with a large fleet to make some experiments and to try out some things. If you just own one vessel, the motivation to try something new out, whether it works, is rather limited, logically. So that is really something where we have difficulties with innovation. On the other hand, also compared to other modes, we have the difficulty that inland navigation is really a niche market. So the big industry, which provides new railway locomotives for an enormous market, the maritime industry providing enormous vessels for real money, they are all not interested, and it's not justifiable for them to invest in research. So we have to overcome these problems with innovation with small steps and finding our way, because in principle it is really very difficult, and the ways have to be found, and we have to take into account the situation that it's not because someone is not respecting inland navigation. No, it's an inland it's a niche market for the industry, and the financial capacity of the sector is rather limited for getting innovations. That's, I think, I don't have a solution, but we have to understand that from my point of view.
Okay, thank you, Michael. So I propose we go to the last question, which is a little bit redundant with some previous one, but it will give you the opportunity again to repeat your expectations. So what would you expect from a large navigation river international network, and which topic should be treated from your point of view in this network? So I can change a little bit the question. Let's imagine PIANG is developing a network, a commission network, whatever you call it, and what do you expect to put in the agenda? What will be the first point that you want to put in the agenda of this network?
If I may, I think that before you even discuss the topics, it would be helpful for PIANG to understand the scope and the boundaries of the work. Basins is a very large term. Do we mean basins or do we mean navigable river? Do we mean basins or do we mean watersheds? What do we mean? If you want to talk watersheds, then you can talk about watershed management, which is different than maintaining, operating a navigable waterway. It also implies discussion of sustainability, of environmental protection, of the broader long-term planning. In the United States, there is a whole effort to get rid of locks and dams because of how they hinder wildlife. So the implication is very large. The question that I would get more than what would the topic be is, what do you want out of it? What does PA gain from it? There are advantages, absolutely. Is it a broader reputation, a reputation for broader expertise? Is it about the ability to provide policy guidance, not advice, because policy advice is very different. I must respect the fact that a country probably may not take policy advice from PA, but may take policy guidance if they share the information. So I would recommend that the conversation next needs to talk about the boundaries of a basin conversation. And are we really talking about basin, the term basin, watershed, navigable waterways, and how can an international body with extraordinary expertise assist individual member countries or subparts of those countries?
Thank you, Hélène. Some other want to react, or maybe the floor? I give to the president or to the secretary?
Please.
Just a complementary question. There exists a network of international basin organizations which functions, and Mr. Ndiaye was participating in this. So, as PIANC, we are more on navigable topics. So, should we address, with them, some common work on this, or have a known network? That's a question.
Please.
Por favor. Eu acho que o Brasil ele está muito aberto a tratar essa questão da navegação de forma mais universal, vamos dizer assim. Em outras palavras, a PIANC é muito bem-vinda. Eu acho que um tópico seria assim, se a PIANC, logicamente, nos limites dela, da realidade sul-americana, se pudesse atuar em vamos dizer, vias navegáveis que são fronteiriças, como a hidrovia do Paraguai, o rio Solimões, que vai até o Peru, Colômbia, que também não se avança o tratado de navegação, é muito bem-vindo. E, por falar nisso, só rapidamente, eu gostaria de fazer um convite do próximo COPEDEC que vai acontecer, tá certo, no Brasil, o qual a ANTAC, representando o Brasil, apoia, e que será de 16 a 21 de outubro no Rio de Janeiro. Tá? E as inscrições para os trabalhos ainda estão abertas, tá? E gostaríamos que tivesse um volume maior. Deverá ter de 300 a 500 pessoas, a expectativa. Eu acho, isso aí é da organização, eu acho que vai ter mais pessoas ainda. A nossa expectativa é muito grande do COPEDEC do Rio de Janeiro do ano que vem.
Thank you. Maybe you should also define relevant topics in COPEDEC which fit with that, so you will easy to attract some publics. So time now is really running, so I'm sure we'll have the time to share more discussion during the lunch. So I would like to give the floor last chance to react. So one or two quick questions before to conclude, or if not, nobody has comment. So I will give to the last word. Before that, Mr. Acalente will conclude the workshop.
Okay, thank you. First, I think I want to thank our Argentinian host here to actually takes initiative for this workshop. I understand that came from you and from your colleagues, probably together with you. And you see, we have so many people here, the room is full, so there is a strong interest. And maybe that might also give a hint that for the next Smart River Conference, we might have a follow-up. Because we have already many people who are coming from the large river systems, and so we can easily get them together. What should we talk about? Yesterday we had the INCOM meeting, and in INCOM, of course, like in all the other commissions from PIANC, you talk about what about new terms of reference for new working groups. And but we are only 15 people in those commissions, and so we have maybe some personal preferences. But if we have a large auditorium like this, and where the large river, experts from the large rivers come together, they might guide work of PIANC in the working groups. They might formulate what needs exist. And so at least there could be some input into PIANC to work for a larger audience. So I think that could be a role of us. And then I would say, yeah, we should be pragmatic. So maybe it's not the time now to develop large concepts and ideas of what we should doing and who should be there, in there and not, but start on a practical issues. And maybe if we are successful, if there is a need, then we can develop further. So maybe start rather small, easy, pragmatic, and then see whether there is a need, and then we can go further.
Thank you. I think now we will really conclude, and so I will give the last word to the president of the Argentina section.
Okay. I like easy tasks. I have 5 minutes to summarize all presentation and discussions. But there is one thing we know. Inland navigation is important everywhere in the world, in different ways, with different type of barges or ships. Inland navigation is very important and is going to develop further in the near future. So the second aspect is that PIANC has a very important role in promoting this inland navigation and helping discussions in a way that we have found in another subjects. When you put 5 people from different countries around a table discussing some subject, and in some moment, of course, agreements are not easy, it's very, very helpful to have a guideline of PIANC and standard of PIANC giving the course, orienting which is the best solution. So in this gathering, we have found there are a lot of issues that we can learn from one another. Governance is important, development of infrastructure is important, maintenance is important, and all that is not sufficient to arrive to the right end of, as Mr. Tokarski mentioned, fully use the potential of navigation. So I appreciate the idea of Geoffroy of making this workshop, and I think that the following up in next meetings is going to be a success. Thank you.